2:30 p.m. Yes. At 2:30 p.m. tomorrow, or today, sorry, we shall all proceed to Ikoyi Stadium. So if it is swallow, you know how to swallow. Go and swallow it now. Don't drink beer yet. We cannot bear to have you drink beer and your dinnering goes to lose. You cannot bear the loss. I'm not announced to see any lawyer. Paparazzi, you can still fly that flyer, please, on screen. Multimedia, please help out. We have here the Sirola president, Lady Catherine Alabi, through Mary Amanda, and she's here with her secretary. Yes. Elena and Agege will be snugging it out later today at Ikoyi Stadium. Remember, the sports competition, the football competition, will start some few months. At Ikoyi Stadium, movement will commence from here to Ikoyi by 2:30, and then the football finals will kick off at 4 p.m. Please, for those of you who would like to do, we go over 2.5. And we are some of you have
Thank you. Hey, officers! Thank you. Yes, I have plenty. Thank you. Move back, please. Hey! Let's stop. That's very important. Keep the space open. Make way. Don't come here, please don't come here. It's okay. Keep moving. No, Cross. I won't grant interview. Okay. I have talked for 2 hours and 1 hour. That should be enough.
Can we please rise on our feet to welcome our very, very distinguished guest speaker, a man that inspired God's own people from the pulpit. Please welcome with me the Most Reverend Professor Godfrey Honor, the Catholic Bishop of Nsukka Diocese. Those who use this WhatsApp are very familiar with this face. CMO! Christ is our leader. Child, this population now go come make Bishop begin feel like say the men of Nsukka, they are not serious. See population, they are serious actually. My Lord, you're most welcome. We have here also our chaplain, the chaplain of Lacmon, Very Reverend Father Francis Ike, the parish priest, Church of Assumption, Falamo. God bless you, Father. Where are the people from St. Patrick, Alaba? St. Patrick, Alaba, how are they? When I see Father, and I won't use old up killer. Old up for Alaba, that time be like penance. All right, so we now move straight into the business of the day. Please be seated. Tell the person beside you, you are welcome. Tell your neighbor, pay attention. No be say tomorrow. Tell your neighbor, no be say tomorrow. You can't go to disturb your parish priest. Tell your neighbor, say no be say tomorrow. You go come to disturb your parish priest. Say, Father, help me. Father, help me. Help yourself now by paying attention to what we're about to discuss. And so, can we have just music? Let me do 1 or 2 consultations. The president, sir? And then we kick off officially. And of course, For the benefit of those who are just coming, especially those who have not been inducted. You've been in CMU 10, 15 years. They never induct you. You are still a new member. This is the Lacmon president. Please put your hands together for Barrister Kingsley Ekwem. Thank you. Dear brothers and men of the church, we now take the first talk, and it deals on confused gender ideology. If your hands are not too busy, therefore, I'd like you to give a Lacmon applaud, make it resounding, as we welcome to the microphone the most Reverend Professor Godfrey Honor, the Catholic Bishop of Nsukka Diocese. His Excellency Most Reverend Godfrey Igwebuike Honor was born to Pa Gabriel Honor and Madam Susanna Honor. He hails from Umilikiani in Udeni. Please, let's continue. If you know you don't want to go for confession today, continue to give that applaud and make it very resounding. My Lord. Those who are not clapping, you are from Mass Center.
Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. CMO, I greet all of you affectionately. I am happy to be in Lagos once more, but I'm afraid that the Archdiocese is getting me used to levels of comfort I'm not familiar with. The Archbishop, His Grace, Most Reverend Alfred Adewale Martins, offered me his home, and I'm so grateful. And also, he invited me, just in case it was your president who invited me. It was the Archbishop who invited me at the request of the of the organization. I was here 2 weeks ago. I hadn't quite unpacked my bag from the last trip, and here I am again. But I'm happy to be here, especially because my presence in Lagos these two occasions have been practically facilitated by the same group, Catholic men. The first set, called itself CBU, Catholic Boys, I guess. Catholic Brothers United. Yes, Catholic Brothers United. But they are Catholic men. And today again, the Lagos Archdiocese and Catholic Men Organization of Nigeria has organized this wonderful event And this is making a statement, a very strong one, about the general opinion about our men in the church. It is often believed that the women are the ones organized, active, proactive, while the men, who are supposed to be leaders and pillars of the family, are laid back when it comes to church activities. But the Lagos Archdiocese and Catholic Men Organization is proving that assumption wrong. For this, I thank and congratulate you. I congratulate the leadership, Barrister Ikoyi and the rest, and all of you who have been able to be here or who are here this morning. The topic assigned to me, and I usually don't alter the topics assigned to me for talks or conferences, for the simple reason that they force me to reflect according to the needs of the organizers of the event, rather than very conveniently recycle other thoughts I may have used in other occasions. So the one assigned to me today, within a large context of this year convention, is confused gender ideologies and family life. And I hope you know that the proponents of the gender discussion will already be upset with you for this title. The only little addition I make is that I would say confused and confusing gender ideologies and family life. And although it is usual to speak of gender ideology in the singular, since, as we shall soon discover, those who are teaching us about gender are not even agreed on what gender means, it is safe to assume that there are ideologies in plural. So confused and confusing gender ideologies and family life. The first thing I have to say by way of introduction is that gender has become one topic about which one cannot speak anywhere in the world without rousing very strong sentiments and sometimes even violent attacks. Not even opinions about race or religion carry such potential for aggression as do opinions about gender. This in itself should be an indicator to any deep-thinking person about what is at stake here. In my opinion, the issue of gender is beyond normal concerns about clarity of thought on human nature and human conduct. The gender issue as it is today may be part of a wide-ranging battle for the soul of contemporary Homo sapiens and the control of how human society is to be organized from now onwards. I find it therefore apt that the Lagos Archdiocese and Catholic Men Organization of Nigeria in this year's Family Convention has chosen to reflect on this issue as it affects the most fundamental unit of human organization, the family. And this is being done within the general theme, the family, the vocations and path to love of God. I am aware that we are about to set sail on very troubled waters. Nevertheless, as disciples of Christ, we should not be afraid to do so in our evangelizing mission. The Lord himself is the captain of the boat. But I think it will be helpful right at the beginning to state some of the things that are bound to affect our approach to this topic. First, the audience. This reflection is addressed to a group of Catholics who have families, and some of whom may be struggling with the challenges posed to them by gender ideology. The gender issue is, therefore, not merely theoretical for them. Second is the context or occasion, namely a family convention that wants to understand how the family is both a vocation and a privileged path to love of God. One is therefore expected to offer at least some guide about how families, in their attempt to live out the love of God, could confront the confusion created by gender ideologies. The third is the speaker. Before I explain this, let me tell you a story. There are a number of so-called Catholic universities in the United States of America, many of them run by the Jesuits. One of such universities invited Cardinal Francis Arinze, that time the prefect for the Congregation for the Discipline of the Sacraments, invited him to speak to graduating students, what they call the commencement speech, in a Catholic university, Georgetown University. Cardinal Arinze, a representative of the Catholic Church, went to a Catholic university and encouraged everybody to assist the new and young graduates as they struggle through life, bearing in mind that the family from which they came and which they were going to build was challenged severely by several issues. And he named those issues that were challenges to the family. He listed abortion, contraception, I think homosexuality. And as he was speaking, a cardinal from the Vatican, some members of the audience stood up and walked out on him. At the end, the president of the university, that is the vice chancellor, issued an apology to the audience for the teaching of the church that was given by Cardinal Arinze. So I'm reminding my audience that I am a Catholic bishop. So the speaker is a Catholic bishop. As a Catholic bishop, I shall be drawing from a rich patrimony of Catholic teaching on human nature, human sexuality, the family, and social organization. Sadly, many of our otherwise well-educated Catholics are unaware of the existence of such patrimony and are therefore left at the mercy of secularist propaganda, often parading as science in such important areas as human nature and human life in a constantly and rapidly evolving society. I use the expression deliberately. Secularist propaganda parading as science. Because many of the things taught and propagated in our schools and in the society today as science, whether the so-called exact sciences or the social sciences, and especially the social sciences, many of those things are politics and propaganda, not science. Many of you know because you are scientists. Given that the issue under examination is human nature, you should therefore expect that philosophical anthropology, as well as Christian theological anthropology, will guide our method in this brief reflection and provide, we hope, some principles for a pastoral conclusion. The first thing I want to examine is the shift from sex to gender. Growing up, most of us knew about the two sexes in animals, male and female. In the traditional worldview of Igbo people, for instance, many things in nature, including deities and musical instruments, exist in pairs. Oke na ne, or oke na nwunye. Male and female. You have drums that are male and drums that are female. You have flutes that are male and flutes that are female. And strangely, it is the shrill flute, not the soft one, that is regarded, not the deep-sounding one, that is regarded as male. The same thing with the drums, at least in my context. And even divinities are paid male and female. For those from the Nsukka area, Omabe is male, Abere is female. Later, then in the forms we filled out as young persons, when one was required to specify whether one was male or female, the heading was usually sex, M or F. And it was presumed once you see sex, you would indicate whether you were male or female. Later, while learning Latin, some of us were introduced to the term gender. When we were taught that nouns and adjectives had genders, feminine, masculine, and neuter. The confusion began already here, for there was no way of understanding which inanimate objects were feminine, masculine, or neuter. And the ending of such words was not always a help, as there were several exceptions. If you learned Latin, perhaps the first word you declined in the first declension was mensa, which is feminine. But very soon you are confronted with agricola, farmer, which is masculine. So the ending in A is not much help. And we discovered eventually that many other languages, modern European languages, have the same structure. Gradually, however, the word sex was replaced by gender while referring to male and female. Well, that in itself did not prove problematic so long as they were used as synonyms. Male gender, female gender, or gender, two genders, male and female. But gradually, with time, the two terms came to mean different things to different people. We should be asking ourselves, how did that happen and why? You see, the children of this world, our Lord tells us, are smarter in dealing with their kind than the children of light. Today, gender seems even to be preferred to sex in everyday language. You see, hear people talking of my gender when they mean males or females, especially in the social media. Gender is seen as being more elegant, more evolved, more inclusive, while sex is regarded as being pedestrian, even vulgar. And strange enough, in a society that has no concern for purity, sex, instead of indicating whether one was male or female, now is understood as simply meaning sexual intercourse. So some even find it heavy in the mouth of a bishop. Now, how many times am I mentioning sex? The problem is that the meaning of the word sex is clear, but that of gender is not, at least not in the way it is used today. My special training is philosophy, but everybody who has studied philosophy here knows that that science of definitions is usually unable to define most fundamental concepts, like life, like sex, but also philosophy itself defies definition. So I'm not trying to furnish you really with definitions, but only some guides for understanding what we are talking about. So when you talk about sex, it refers to those characteristics. Some will say simply biological characteristics, but I will add for the human being, biological and spiritual characteristics which make one male or female. Later, you will understand why I insist, not just biological, but also spiritual for human beings. That will be the simple way of understanding sex. One who has certain, or rather, those characteristics that will permit us to define or identify a person as, if we are talking of human beings, as male or as female. Gender, on the other hand, is said to be different from sex, but exactly what it is not clear. Sometimes it is said to be a social construct about roles, identities, behaviors associated with, and that is the strange thing, with masculinity and femininity. Or simply, one's inner feeling, underline, pay attention to that, feeling, one's inner feeling about being male or female or other. The point I'm making is this now. Much as the defenders of a gender identity different from sex may try, they are still unable to dissociate their notion of gender from male and female. The Latin word genus, from which the English word gender is derived, as well as the French genre and the Italian genere, are all related. And they all have to do with giving birth, generare, to generate. The root is the same. Yet, gender ideologues are intent on separating gender from the generation of new life. Pay attention to that. There is a reason. One area where gender is clearly distinct from sex is that whereas there are only two sexes, male and female, The new understanding of gender defies all attempts at enumeration. Sex is said to be binary, and gender is said to be non-binary. That is binary two, male and female. Gender defies the number 2 or any number at all. Some will give you 50, others will give you 72, some will say we are close to or more than 1,000 genders. The reason for this is that whereas the characteristics that count for sexuality are objective and verifiable, once gender is believed to be determined exclusively by the person's internal feelings, access to which is denied to others. So my internal feeling determines my gender, and you have no way of knowing how I feel. It is therefore possible, at least theoretically, for there to be as many genders as there are human beings on earth. And I think, and this is another point I want to underline, I think this is a deliberate ambivalence. By now, for instance, we have become familiar with the initials L, G, B, T, Q plus. That means L, G, B, T, Q, and still counting. We never finish yet. Used to represent some of the gender identities. Each time I talk about gender identity, I'm using a term others use without indicating I understand exactly what it means. When gender identity is said to be different from sexual orientation, now this is what I mean by deliberate ambivalence. When gender identity is said to be different from sexual orientation, the use of the letters L, G, B, T, Q, that are all initials for sexual orientations, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer or questioning, and still others, to represent genders, makes one wonder whether words still mean the same things for those who use them within the same language. In this regard, we now find ourselves in a situation where we are using words that are familiar, yet they are unable to communicate meaning. Just like the Israelites in Babel, Genesis chapter 11, verses 7 to 9. We hear partner, parent. Now it is parent A or parent B, used in place of father or mother. Partner used in place of husband or wife, or just somebody with whom one is staying. If we say husband or wife, you know what we are referring to. People who are united in some bond, even if not within the religious setting, at least some stability. But if I say partner, you don't know whether I'm talking of a business partner or a wife or a husband. And you don't even know whether I am talking of another non-human mammal. Another problem is, do we call this a theory or an ideology? Here I may not go into details, but the proponents and defenders of gender ideology prefer to speak of gender theory rather than gender ideology. because of the negative connotation the term ideology implies. I'm happy many of you are professors of sciences, so you can educate us on this, on what I'm about to note now. Well, in its origin, ideology was not a negative concept. It was a positive concept, even though it originated from a fundamental error in philosophy. It is a word coined at the end of the 18th century by the French Enlightenment philosopher Antoine Louis-Claude Destutt, Comte de Tracy, Destutt de Tracy for short. And he used it to describe what he called the science of ideas. Ideas logos. The science of ideas, ideology. It was supposed to be a study of the ideas which he regarded, following Locke, as objects of consciousness, in order to be able to challenge and criticize the governments of the time. As would be expected, Napoleon Bonaparte, who had his own extremist positions, and Karl Marx, two people who were not related in any way, were the ones to regard ideology as an abuse. But both of them took that position for different reasons. Without boring you with their reasons, I think it is right to regard ideology as an abuse, because it is, given the subjective nature of ideas, that is, that they are so internal that one can't have access to them, another can't have access to them, it is difficult to see how there could be any form of science of ideas. It was an error. It was an error on the part of John Locke to think that that ideas were objects of our consciousness. Now, permit me to digress a little. Anytime we see an object or experience anything, that object we see or experience continues to exist in our consciousness, no longer as the object of our sense perceptions, but only as non-material contents of our consciousness. John Locke, who was an empiricist, said that those ideas were themselves the objects of thought. That was an error, because the ideas were instruments of thought and not objects of thought. The objects are the things that those ideas represent. Having made that mistake, all those who were inspired by him continued in the error and amplified it. Because as you well remember, there is a principle formulated by Aristotle that the least deviation from the truth is multiplied later 1,000-fold. Nowhere is this so clear as if you are driving on a superhighway in Europe or America. You just turn a little to the right and you are lost. At the beginning, it just seems like a little turn, but then it will take you long hours in some occasions to retrace your step. That is if you are conscious that you took the wrong turn. And when it is deviation from the truth, it may look like a little deviation, but at the end, it becomes very large. So, this error in Locke that led people to think of ideas as objects and therefore capable of having some science is what is criticized by Marx. And similarly, I think that there cannot be any theory in the scientific understanding of the term about gender identity, given that it is entirely subjective to individuals and their inner feelings. The claim of the gender ideologues to a scientific objectivity remains a claim. Now, scientists here know the stages from hypothesis to theory to law. A scientific law is a firm principle ratified by experimentation or observation and experimentation, so ratified that it becomes a point of reference for valid conclusions in the future. You have Newton's law, for instance. But a theory is also a principle, not as firm as law, but very useful in scientific deductions. You have Einstein's theory of the general law of relativity, which no scientist ignores. But the difference between scientific law and scientific theory is that the scientific theory is always open to disputations. Well, all scientific knowledge is open to verification. But hypothesis is only an assumption that hasn't even acquired the status of a theory, because too many things are taken for granted. In the case of gender ideology, it is not just only an assumption, but an assumption that has been elevated to the level of a dogma and defended fanatically. This, I need to say this early, this does not deny the reality of the psychological condition known as gender dysphoria, in which a male or a female believes that his or her gender does not conform with his sex or her sex. Yes, there are scientific bases to sustain that in some people, their biological structure and even their biological characteristics and even cultural personal experiences make it difficult for them to identify whether they are male or female. But this exists in other fields, not just about gender. It exists in other fields. And as a matter of fact, knowing that there is a medical connection in the discussion about gender, I was wondering, when you assigned topics to us in this convention, why you didn't ask the medical doctor to talk about gender. You asked him rather to talk about real presence in the Eucharist, and asked a bishop to talk about gender. Whatever you see, you take. There are many stories about non-clarification of gender in human beings. Many. Many will even say that the biblical teaching, male and female, he created them, suggests that every human being was initially created androgynous. That is, both male and female. Greek mythology contains that, and even psychologists say, as like Carl Jung, some psychologists insist that there is the invisible partner in every one of us. Every male has a female dimension, and every female has a male dimension. That becomes clearer only with growth and cultural experience. And some cultural groups have explained that what they do at puberty rites of circumcision really is to define definitively the person's sex or gender, either as male or female. That it is only at that stage, about the age of 15, so explain such cultures. It is only at that age that one becomes definitively a male, and that vestige of femininity in him is excised during circumcision. And it is ritualized. And also, for the female, at that age, one becomes definitively female, and that vestige of masculinity in her is excised during circumcision. I am not defending whether that is right or wrong, but I'm talking of understanding of the basic components of human beings that sometimes is not clear to everybody. And when it becomes when this non-clarity becomes acute, now this is the problem, the gender dysphoria, when it becomes acute, rather than see it as a problem that requires help, some people now want to promote it as a normal condition of being human. Nobody would argue that anorexia, for instance, is a normal condition for a human being who is obsessed about his or her weight. So such people require assistance, not the promotion of their condition into a globally recognized human way of being. Now, I want to briefly mention how the gender theory evolved. My own assessment. I think, or gender ideology rather, how it evolved. What began as an initial positive campaign for respect of the dignity of every human being, male or female, and for the equality of their rights before the law, what began as a laudable campaign gradually slipped into this ideology that we now have. There is no denying that because human beings are so structured by nature, and for us, because of God's gift, as to be male or female, I think we need to move from the rain. This structure gave rise also to rules. And these rules were determined culturally. And even though they were not arbitrary, I'll give an example of male and female and the roles of mothers and fathers in families. Every culture and religion always assigns rules to fathers and mothers based on their sexuality and characteristics. The rule, and this is about the teleology. They tell us the why of why people are structured the way they are. Why do men have extra muscles and stronger features? The society interprets that as being so that they'll be strong enough to provide. So assigning the role of providing for the family is not arbitrary, even though it is culturally determined. The same thing, the mother's care for the children and home care is also not arbitrary, because the long period of gestation establishes an intimate, affectionate relationship between the mother and the child. To the point that, as you know, only in humans do mothers never completely let go of their offspring. No matter how old you are here as a man, If your mother is still alive, she worries about you. Perhaps not as much as the father. And recently, research has revealed that there is this condition that of a biological condition that makes some of the DNA, a mixture of the DNA between mother and child during pregnancy. I think you call it chimerism. Thank you. And there's a mother here behind me that helped me, medical doctor as well. Chimerism. Some parts of the fetus, some DNA of the fetus mingle with the DNA of the mother. Right now, scientists are not sure about how long it remains, but some insist it remains in the mother throughout life. And I'll close this parenthesis by saying that one non-Catholic who converted to Catholicism, a woman, argues that that is her basis of accepting the Assumption of Our Lady. That the body of Christ that did not see corruption, DNA from that body remained in Our Lady, and the body of Our Lady scientifically could not have seen corruption for the same reason. Now, science people, they talk this one, not be dogma. Now, but in the assigning of these rules, some cultures exaggerated to the point of oppression and exclusion. We don't need to go back to the biblical accounts of creation, where the book of Genesis tells Eve that she would have to suffer and long for her man without receiving attention, or even to the teachings of Paul about the role of women in the Christian community. We don't need to go as far back as that. But even in so recently as the 20th century Europe and America, many women had no rights, or most women. Women had no voting rights in most of Europe and America until very recently. And our condition in this part of the world was worsened because we were colonized by Victorian England. And Victorian England had no right and respect for women, even though the Queen was reigning. And in many parts of Europe until today, and perhaps also in Nigeria, because it's a long story, how colonialism distorted the male-female or man-woman relationship in our individual cultures. A very long story. But in many parts of the world up to today, women and men perform the same or do the same jobs, in the same employment, but women are paid less. That is not justifiable. The same way, up to today, man and woman, husband and wife will be working, each struggling to earn some money because raising a family has become more expensive. That again is deliberate. And the woman sometimes brings in more cash into the family. Yet, in some families, you still find out that when both of them come back from work, whereas the man sits at the parlor watching television, usually, mind you, or in, what do you call it? Or Barcelona, or any of these European tournaments, league tournaments, the woman comes back more tired and still has to go to the kitchen alone to prepare dinner and find out whether the children did their homeworks. In some families, that is still the situation. And this cannot be right. That is cultural. In the face of this cultural situation in many parts of the world, voices began to rise against discrimination. And that was called gender-based discrimination. I will say that so long as we understand the word gender to be a synonym of sex, then discussion about gender will not be very complicated. But when the words have acquired a different and sometimes opposing meaning, it becomes difficult to communicate. Now, again, this movement of calling attention to the rights and dignity of women got bad advertisement at the beginning, because it started as, at least in some parts, or the parts most known to us, as feminist movement. And in the early feminist movements, at least, there was a lot of, let me call it, displeasure or anger in the activists themselves. So it was easy to label them angry women who were angry at God for creating them women. Therefore, everything they said or proposed was judged in that light. But in all honesty, that was a noble movement to call the attention of the entire world to the injustice that was being perpetrated culturally and even legally against women, just because they were women. Suddenly, however, in the late 80s and 90s, that movement extended beyond rights and the dignity of women and became a movement for gender equality and gender fluidity and gender elasticity that no one knew exactly at this point what was being fought for. I think, if I may use another biblical image, that was when the enemy came at night and sowed the darnels among the wheat. A noble idea that was meant to correct a cultural and societal error or errors was suddenly, or rather gradually, hijacked by people who had other intentions. And that is where we are today, that the so-called gender identity or gender ideology now means that an individual has his or her sex determined at birth, or even rather assigned at birth, but the gender must be chosen. Because it is not given, it is free. Gradually also, since sex or sexual orientation is the basis eventually of the determination of gender, even the idea of one's sexuality in itself and biology became a matter of individual choice. And the fluidity means, and that's why I say it is difficult to communicate and even difficult to organize. The fluidity means, if today I feel I am male, so I remain. If tomorrow or even in the evening I strongly feel and identify as female, so I remain. And later still, if I think I am neither male nor female, that should be okay, because you don't know how I feel. Or perhaps I am both. That is also okay. But incidentally, any of you who is a civil servant, who is 65, but feels himself or herself 40 and alters the date, will go to jail. We can change our sexual identity or gender identity, but we cannot change the date of our birth. There is some contradiction in that. This may be a very exaggerated position, yes, but we now have, and this is the challenge for the family, we now have situations when we no longer know who should be the director or the coordinator of family stability, who provides guidance that is beyond financial assistance. I know what mothers often do. And mothers are often more terrible in punishment than the fathers. But if a child does something wrong, even though the mother can discipline him or her, sometimes the terror is to tell you, your daddy will soon be back and I will tell him. Just that alone will make the boy or the girl do things differently. And that was big help. But besides that, or before that even, the first victim of this confusion is the family. The family says the Catechism of the Catholic Church is the cell, the fundamental cell of human society. And anybody who wants to destroy the society just needs to attack the family. But then before attacking the family, this ideology attacked the source of family, marriage. If a male could unite with a fellow male because they feel so, or a female unite with a fellow female because they feel so, now, what about the possibility of procreation towards which natural union of male and female is originally ordered? It becomes irrelevant. And when marriage becomes irrelevant and just becomes a union of any two persons, no matter whether they are male or female, neither or both, marriage as an institution receives a severe attack at its very foundation. And once marriage is hit, family can't stand. And now you have children, people, who believe they are males trapped in the body of a female or females trapped in the body of a male. And schools, institutions, especially schools for children and young adults that should be transmitting values and virtues, now teach children or encourage children to migrate from one gender to another gender. And you run the risk of your boy calling you from school, or when you call in his school in the UK or US, and that is where I will conclude when I come there, because we, as a sign of advancement, the elite in this country, we send our children abroad. And what values are being transmitted there? You call to find out what he's doing, and he tells you, Daddy, I'm now a girl. Or Mommy, I'm now a boy. And if you object to that, even if you are living in that environment, you risk losing custody of your children. That is the attack on the family, disorganizing the family. The consequences are many, but the gender fluidity, the subjectivity of gender identity is part of the product of what Pope Benedict called the dictatorship of relativism. That is, truth is what I perceive it to be, and nobody has a right to say anything to me about that. And I then say, how do we as church or as Christians and Catholics respond to this type of provocation or challenge or difficulty in front of us? Now, remember what I said at the beginning. As a Catholic bishop, I have a rich patrimony of teaching that I can draw from, and so do you. There is sufficient material in our heritage to help us clarify or get clearer ideas in this situation. I'll begin with the philosophy. And this is classical philosophy, not necessarily Christian. In classical philosophy, especially as elaborated by Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, in contradistinction to his master, Plato. Plato had said that our body is an illusion and has no part to play in who we are. Aristotle says, no, our soul is our body is as important as our soul in composing our unity as human beings. Because every human being is not just a material body or a disincarnate soul, but a substantial unity of body and soul. And if the body is not animated by a soul, anima, then it can't have life. Stones, rocks, or other inanimate objects, even plants and other non-human animals, according to Aristotle, had souls that made their bodies living bodies. This inseparable unity between the body and the soul is such that the human body is such an important part that and body is sexually determined. The sexuality of a human person is not an accident. But that body is human, not because of its material components, but because it is animated by a human soul. So the first error of gender ideology is to treat the body as if it were independent of the soul. Once you take the two together, then sexuality is no longer an additional characteristic that can be removed and one still remains human, but part and parcel of our humanity as our essential characteristic. If you add to that Christian anthropology, then we are not just body and soul, but created by a loving God in his image and likeness. And if we believe and as we accept that we are created, our being male or female was not determined by us, but given to us as a gift. And every gift is cherished, protected, and developed. And the basis of our relationship with God and with one another in complementarity and love, mutual love, is founded on our differentiation, complementary differentiation as male and female. Since we are created male and female, it is a gift we receive, not something that we determine by ourselves. The Catholic or Christian teaching insists that every human being, male or female, is equal in dignity before God and has fundamental rights that are recognized by the society but not attributed by the society. The same thing, even the family, that the complementary relationship between man and woman establishes, is a fundamental unit recognized by the society, and its dignity is not attributed by the society. So I think the fundamental error of gender ideologues or ideologies is to separate the male, the body from the soul, and to fail to recognize that our creaturely nature is a gift that we did not choose, and therefore we can only protect and modify. I'm seeing the MC with a piece of paper. Maybe he wants to remind me about time. Now, I have a lot to suggest about what we can get from our heritage as Catholics in dealing with this situation. In the first place, we have to realize, recognize, or acknowledge that all forms of discrimination are wrong. morally wrong. And we have to address those discriminations, irrespective of the different rules that the society or the church assigns to male and female, that irrespective of the difference in rules, the dignity is the same and the respect should not be under debate. Again, the family. The family is constituted by a sacrament of matrimony or marriage, which is a union between a man and a woman, not a union between two genders. Between a man and a woman, ordered towards mutual collaboration in love and the procreation of children. Openness to fecundity, even if no procreation takes place because of some condition or age, at least the disposition has to be there. And if the union is such that it no longer ordered towards procreation, it cannot be called a marriage, and it cannot constitute a family by the understanding of the teaching of the church. Now, if I'm encouraged to go towards my conclusion at this point, I would quote the passage from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, from verses 15 to 17, where he says, "Be very careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is." Somewhere else he warns us, don't conform yourself to the standards of this world, but be redeemed yourself. Be redeemed so that you can redeem the world. As light and salt, we have to be attentive to the input from contemporary society, and in such a way that we become light to that contemporary society rather than being absorbed by the darkness it generates. I want to make an affirmation, and that will be my conclusion. I notice a line connecting gender ideology, same-sex attraction and union, the promotion of contraception, abortion rights advocacy, in vitro fertilization, and other forms of assisted reproductive techniques, ART. I notice a line connecting all these realities. This line may be too faint to be clearly perceived by many, at least for now, but it is there. It should not surprise anyone, therefore, to notice notice the same groups of persons and institutions behind all of them. Gender ideology says that human sexuality is not important. It is only biological and not chosen. What is important is gender identity, which is freely chosen and at any rate never definitively decided. Given that sexuality is ordered towards procreation, diminishing the importance of sexuality aims at de-emphasizing its relationship with procreation. So sexuality does not determine procreation. Whatever happens to sexuality, human beings can still procreate. And in this sense, it will not matter whether human intimacy is between persons of the opposite sexes or between persons of the same sex. What matters is, in quotes, love and nothing more. But here, it will be pertinent to recall the admonition of Pope St. John Paul II. Do not accept anything as love which lacks truth. Because really, only truth, the truth will make you free. I continue by my affirmation, with my affirmation. While encouraging unions which are not ordered toward procreation, offering them the possibility of having offspring through the use of science and technology, male and female couples whose unions in love naturally result in the conception of new human life are encouraged, cajoled, and sometimes even coerced to interrupt the natural process through the use of contraception, or when that does not work, to kill the unborn through abortions. Just as individuals are made to believe that they are free to decide whether to be male or female or both or neither at any time, that is, that they are free to choose what to do with their bodies with regard to gender, so also, you hear that statement from pro-abortionists, a woman is free to decide what happens to her body, even if that means terminating the life of another human person whose only crime is dwelling in his or her natural habitat. There appears to be, in many parts of the world today, a correlation. This is my conclusion. There appears to be a correlation between the increase in the various forms of assisted reproductive techniques and the decrease in the natural process of reproduction. And by the time human beings get so programmed or conditioned to dissociate human reproduction from the voluntary and responsible union of a man and a woman in love, then the stage becomes set and the road will be clear for the dominance of the laboratory manufacturing of babies, entirely under the control of a market economy, like every other product of technology, entirely under the control of market economy, like every other product of technology, and as directed by the super rich and the powerful. This will be the end, it is presumed, of all forms of theism, that is belief in God, and true religion or worship of the true God will be replaced by a secularist religion in which the human being is at the center. What I have just said may sound like an outlandish assumption, but the secularist and the theistic project, which has its roots in some 17th and 18th century philosophical and cultural movements in Europe, seem to lead in this direction, even if the outcome may go far beyond what the originators of these movements foresaw. These movements sought to enthrone God, human reason over and above God, and to transform theology into anthropology, to transform every discourse about God into discourse about man. One of the outstanding prophets of contemporary atheism, the German philosopher Ludwig Feuerbach, stated clearly that his aim in his critique of religion was to make the human being, not God, the only object of all human veneration and adoration. Whereas Thomas Hobbes, the English philosopher, saw the state in which man is a wolf to man, homo homini lupus est, as a state of misery, Feuerbach, this German philosopher, saw the state in which man is a god to man, homo homini deus est as a state of glory. For him, man is God to man. There should be no God in existence because his existence diminishes our dignity. And taking a cue from him, Karl Marx, having described religion as an alienation and impoverishment of the human person, advocated the use, now note why I mention him, the use of science and technology to cure the human being of this sickness of religion. Now, some scientists have taken that mission seriously, but see where it has left human beings, in total confusion and disorder. So, these confused and confusing gender ideologies have disrupted our relationships, the way we understand one another, the way we understand the family, and the roles of the members of the family and their responsibility to one another. But all is not lost. All is not lost because we are there as disciples of Christ and messengers of the gospel of truth and love. This is why I believe that we have to be very careful now not to be caught napping. I mentioned the elite sending their children to schools abroad where they have no control over what they are being taught. But even here within our country, Nigeria, our elite schools, including Catholic schools, sometimes place emphasis only on the A's that our children get and not on the virtues, moral virtues and values that they learn. Your child may not make an A in English, but he or she may learn to respect you and take your instructions seriously. There is a big difference between this and the other. I think we have to pay attention to what we do with our schools, even here, and what we do in the formation of our children from day one. Parents, fathers and mothers, let me not use just the expression parents that is no longer clear in what it means. Fathers and mothers, I heard one of you giving a testimony yesterday about the impact of short few seconds of prayer and blessings imparted on his children every day, every single day. Create space for the moral, religious, and familial education of your children. That is your vocation, and that is the path to your love of God, which is the theme of your convention. Otherwise, add gender ideologies, add artificial intelligence to gender ideologies, and the situation is complete for a total absence of God's intervention in our lives. And our situation will be worse than that of the Israelites after they disobeyed God. That will not happen to us because men like you are still members of the Catholic Men Organization in Nigeria. God bless you. Thank you very much.
A standing ovation. Louder, 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 louder.
Now, question and answer. I have a summary of 8 questions from here. MC, I'm afraid I'll take this part because there are some I'm going to screen out because the answers are pretty obvious. Somebody asked a question here. Now, the 8 questions are for his lordship. My lord, I'm going to save you from answering some of these questions because the answer is obvious. Somebody asked here, what's the church position on abortion? That's not the question the lordship will answer. We know what the church position is on abortion. Life begins from the moment of conception to the natural end that question has been answered. So I would delete that question from here. What's the stand of the church on family planning? Oh, repeat, family planning. My brother, my sister, whoever asks this question, the position of the church once again is clear. I will leave that to the liberty of his lordship to see what I can answer. What is CBCN doing about confused gender ideology and its misconception? This sounds like another lecture for another day, but the position of his lordship cannot be different from what the CBCN does. Now, I will also say the question that I think I will allow. These are the ones I will suggest. My Lord, maybe you don't need to answer this. Position of the church on surrogacy. What is the church saying on artificial insemination? These questions are answered. We are answered in our Catechism of the Catholic Church. So for the rest, I will invite his lordship to please come and then take the ones you are able to take. I think number one question is interesting. And the second one, perhaps, you are at liberty to answer the ones you want to answer. While we expect other questions for the interventionist, if we can collect them, we'll see how much we can take. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. And I thank the other presenters who have enlightened us in a very great way. When you sit down after having spoken, you find out you may even have left out the more important things. And question and answers give us opportunity to return to some of them. And primarily, you have said it. We can't move away outside God's plan for us. We are creatures, and nothing should replace our relationship with God. That is where to start, and that is where what helps us deal with all the confusion. I never, ever implied, as the first question suggested, that science and technology caused more harm than good. No. Often, science and technology are able to even solve the problems they create, because behind that, there is always the human intelligence. And I heard Bishop Badejo once say that artificial intelligence is never entirely intelligent. So, and human intelligence, being human, has the capacity, when it is united with divine intelligence, of being fulfilled. And again, I want to invite all of us, when we have been saying don't be afraid, we also we don't have to be afraid of being behind schedule in technological development and cyber advancement. There is a statement attributed to the tortoise, Mbe. He says, I may be lucky to be going so slowly because I may be going in the wrong direction. And Don Williams, the American country musician, wrote as far back as 1973 that it is no use running when you are on the wrong route. Given where some cultures are going because of their uncritical adoption of science and capacities of science and technology, not realizing that science and technology is often manipulated by those who are responsible for what is going on, given that we should be careful, we should be happy that sometimes we are not up to date, because our slowness, especially as Christians, may become the point of salvation for the rest of humanity. Not everything that is scientifically possible is morally permissible. The doctor pointed it out. God gives us anything and everything, and the human being can always change its destination. When somebody invented the means of movement that in a few minutes will lift you from here to London, another person put bombs into it. And instead of becoming, I'm talking of the aircraft, instead of becoming just a means of transportation, it has become an instrument of death. But then, what it is serving is still more than the harm it is causing. How will you handle transgender particularity, is it? Transgender, particularly from your son, who is 23. Now, parents are advised, 1, compassion. Here, presence is important. Compassion. Whatever happens, we have to accept the human being the way he or she is, in order to be able to take them to where they should be. Jesus came down and became man, not to leave us as sinful men, but then to take us up to the glory of being children of God. But he did not do that by remaining where he was. So we have to meet these struggling children where they are and accompany them step by step with the truth. I will share this story. There are 2. In my lectures in philosophical anthropology in Rome, I always explain to my students why homosexuality was not the normal sexual condition for human beings based on philosophical understanding of human nature, especially as it relates to relationship between body and soul. One of my students approached me after the course and told me how angry he was with me when I first said that homosexuals were not normal. But he then confessed that I forced him to reason, and he came to accept that I was right and came to thank me. But he was shocked that none of his teachers and formators in the past had led him through that difficult path. That was my personal experience. Then I met a mother in the United States of America who told me she had a homosexual son whose father had so rejected that they had no relationship between them. And because of the pain her son was going through, she decided to devote her entire life assisting people in the condition of her son. But she told me, my greatest problem are those who tell people like my son that they are normal. My son is not normal. There is no love without truth. You don't help a sick person by telling him it's okay. Doctor, if I come to you with ailment, you can encourage me that all is not lost, but you can't tell me that nothing is wrong with me and say you are helping me. Once, my first experience at a confessional in Italy, I was still struggling with Italian. And one of the first Italian expressions I learned was va bene. Va bene. Va bene means that's good. That's good. So, one man, after confessing his sins, told me he had finished, and I suddenly said, va bene. That's fine. I fired back at me, Father, it's not fine. I have committed sin. You don't help people like this by telling them nothing is wrong with them. But you can't help them either if you outrightly condemn them. Also because homosexuality as a condition is one thing, and homosexuality as an act or action is another. Sometimes what you have to judge is what led the person to that condition, situation. So that would then determine the level of moral culpability. So they require help, not condemnation. And here, the church must face up with that reality. For a mother or a father, once your child has entered that situation, you accompany her or him or them with your prayers, but still the truth. Confused gender ideologies and hermaphrodites, what is the relationship? I just mentioned that some suffer from gender dysphoria. Some people have no clearly defined, biologically speaking, no clearly defined sexual characteristics. But my brothers, some people are born with less fingers or more than others. So it is not just in sexuality that we have such abnormalities. What is the church? Well, on surrogacy, there is a large chapter about assisted procreation. The principle of the Catholic Church is that on no condition should a human being be seen as a means to an end. Every human being is an absolute value as value, even though he or she is not absolute as a being. So anything that we do that suggests that the human being is being used as a means to an end, for instance, when I have or a couple have to get children in order to satisfy their aspiration as parents, those children are being used as a means to the psychological satisfaction of the parents. It is wrong. Or when another human being, male or female, is being used as an instrument of procreation with which an offspring of which that person would have no emotional attachment, that is also manipulative and unapproved by the church. Now, get it right. Very often it is poverty that drives women, girls, to accepting surrogacy. And they pretend all is okay. Don't be too sure until you have private conversations with them in moments of serenity. But bottom line, it is always wrong to use another human being as a means to an end. The same thing with artificial insemination. We need to step up our religious education and moral education. As church, one of whose leaders in Nigeria I am. Because we are now so quiet about assisted procreation, because under the social and psychological stress that parents of couples suffer as a result of childlessness, we keep quiet about the dangers of assisted procreation. Bear in mind, every fertilized egg, that is, every embryo, is a human person. And if you consider every human being as a person, you can then answer the question about the position of the church with artificial insemination. In the process, so many human beings are destroyed in order to produce one. That cannot be right. The conditions under which artificial insemination is permitted are so complicated and delicate that it's hardly possible. Is the church partnering with the government about the confused? Yes. Well, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, cried out in 2019 in Poland while addressing the bishops about what he called ideological colonization, where he is insisting that some people are using the financial bait to constrain African and Latin and Asian countries to accept these wrong and manipulative gender ideologies just because of their need for help. There is the highest authority in the church already speaking out against this practice. And of course, the Nigerian hierarchy of the church is always attentive and also, I don't want to use the word, the word is now advocacy, the advocacy of the church with government with regard to laws and principles that may be anti-family and anti-marriage. Luckily, our society is still sufficiently stable in that regard. And also, here is one area where Christians and Muslims are, and traditional religionists are in agreement. So advocacy in that area is easier. Family planning, confused. Well, last year, the Catholic bishops addressed the issue of AI, artificial intelligence, while dialoguing with priests in our plenary assembly. And in my intervention on that occasion, I did underline the same thing I underlined here about all this being part of a project of phasing out God from the consciousness of human beings. That is, as the end product, whether it is AI or gender ideology or assisted procreation, they may all be part of a large project of substituting man for God in our interpersonal relationship. I called it part of the end project of Feuerbach's Homo homini deus est. So and then again we have departments in our General Secretariat that is occupied with the issues of education. And such department is always offering directives and guidelines to our schools and Catholic teachers. And besides also, you may want to send your child to Veritas University to keep the Catholic tradition. And finally, the eighth one, which the president wanted to, family planning and abortion. Abortion is always wrong. When a mother is being treated for an ailment, and as part of that treatment, a pregnancy is lost, is not called morally for the church abortion. So, but any direct intervention that terminates the life of the unborn is grave sin. Family planning is accepted only if it does not violate the basic natural principles of procreation. How is open to all of you. I will be surprised if you were not taught that in your marriage instructions before marriage. Problem, many of you never attended that course because you always have reasons to plan for your wedding. You even plan for the man who will insult you on that day, whom you call DJ, and pay him a lot of money, yet you have no time for marriage, pre-marriage instructions. And at the end, the consequences become obvious. Thank you very much.
He said, what are the key alternatives between acknowledging diverse gender identities and the potential criticisms of gender ideology, being overly fluid or socially constructed?
You know, as a teacher, I'm not afraid of questions. Because I have I have one line answer that has always worked. In all honesty, when I say, I don't know. Because when I don't know, I don't know. So, but in this case, I know. As a Christian, your response is gender, sex is assigned by God. The role of the different genders may be influenced by our cultural contexts and history, but that you are male or female is not open to negotiation. Finally, we must continue to address issues of injustice and oppression based on difference between male and female, because that is what gives rise to some of these desires for migration. But strangely, more men want to become women than women who want to be men. I think it is because the women are wiser. They know that to become a man will make them more, they'll suffer them more. Whereas the men are rushing to be women. Well, I wish you well. Thank you.
Let me wrap up. Thank you so much, Your Lordship.
So, my Lord Bishop and the rest of the panelists will take a photograph. Paparazzi, please. The President. We invite the chaplain. Don't go yet. His Lordship will bless us before he departs, please. But we'll take the photograph first. A job opportunity has opened somewhere. If you know anybody who knows how to stop a plane, stand in front of an aircraft that is about to take off. Any aircraft that is about to take off, you know somebody that can stand in front of it to prevent it from taking off. See me, I'll link you up with the employer. Somebody also wanted to ask a question. He said, how can artificial intelligence be utilized between a landlord and a tenant? You can utilize it by paying your rent online. Please, please, please. We want orderliness. Just move back, please, please. Let's not crowd this place. Only the official. DJ, bring it up, bring it up, bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. Only the official photographers are permitted around here. If una dey rush to receive communion like this, you no go dey reach for mass. Please move back, we beg you. We beg you. Move back, thank you. You see me afterwards, not now. Una don't start to. Una don't start. If you to. How can you stand here and you want his lordship to bless you and you are crowding him like this? Bring down the music. The way you people are crowding here, you are crowding here as if you want to shout, crucify him. Bring down the music. Thank you, thank you. DJ, bring it down.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. We fly to your protection.
The Lord be with you. May the name of the Lord be blessed. Our help is in the name of the Lord. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Peace be with you.
And with your spirit.
And so peacefully make way. Peacefully make way.